It is my honor now to invite up our Darshan, Jason Fenster, for some words of Torah. Thanks, Mom.
When I was 6 or so, my mother said to me, being a good Jew means being a good person. I was a dutiful son, so I believed her. And I still am, so I still do. And since that moment, I've been trying to figure out, what does it mean to be good? Of course, I think she meant something more grand than good, but she said it to a 6-year-old, so good will have to suffice. I'll check with her after services, but I'm pretty sure she meant something like working to save the world. And I'm not going to give you a laundry list of all the world's problems. Not now, anyway. It's 11 a.m. You've checked Haaretz, The Times, or Facebook at least once. You know that we have real work to do to solve the problems that face our society. It's enough simply for me to say that for me and for you, I hope as well, being good requires being a part of finding solutions to these problems. But I need help learning how. I want an example. I want a person I can follow around, learn from, and emulate. I want someone who exemplifies the goodness that I aspire to. I want what I think my mother wanted for me, a tzaddik. A tzaddik, right? That's humongous, but it sounds impossible, but maybe it's not. Our sacred text names one person and one person only as a tzaddik. Noach ish tzaddik, tamim haya b'dorotav. Noah was a tzaddik, blameless in his generation. We tend to read this as two separate ideas. He was tzaddik and he was tamim in his generation. But tamim can mean whole or perfect. So perhaps following Ibn Ezra, we should attach tamim to tzaddik and read it not as two separate claims, but rather, Noah was the perfect tzaddik for his generation. Yes, the rabbis compare Noah unfavorably to Abraham, dismissing him as only righteous for his generation. But I'll take it. What else can I ask for? You can only be complete in your own time. And I'll settle for finding a tzaddik who is as complete as possible for now. Thankfully, we don't get just one tzaddik. Crack open a Talmud, and there Abaye asserts each generation gets 36 of them, the so-called Lamed Vavniks who merit the world's redemption. But 36 is still so few. My tzaddik search might as well be a hunt for the abominable snowman. However, the Talmud follows with Rava, and he contends the actual number is 18,000. Move over, Lamed Vavniks, the Shmona Asar Elefniks are coming to town. My chances of meeting a tzaddik just increased 500-fold. And with so many tzaddikim running around the planet, isn't there a chance that we could find one right here in this room? To say that among us is one of the 36, that would be hubris. But one of the 18,000? Maybe. Maybe we have a few of them. Maybe even more. In a time like Noah's, in a time like our own, even complete tzaddikim need not be tzaddik-like all the time. Some of the time will do. Only some of the time do we expect flashes of goodness, sure signs of compassion, moments when God's presence shines through in the deeds of those around us. So, what if? What if those moments happen here, but we just don't notice them? What if we are among the 18,000? What if we are a community of momentary tzaddikim? What if HUC-JIR wasn't a rabbinical, cantorial, education and masters in Jewish stuff institution? What if it was a tzaddik training school? And on the application, prospective students like our guests who are here today had to affirm, "I am a tzaddik in the making." And their essay was about how they are on the path to becoming a tzaddik. How would it feel to learn in that place? How could our college institute become a place that trains each of us, like Noah, to be tzaddik tamim b'dorotav? It's not so much about finding tzaddikim. It's about making them. When we treat each other as if we are the 18,000, we are more likely to become them. When we hold ourselves to the highest standards, those standards are more likely to be met. We actually can become tzaddikim if we actively acknowledge each other as tzaddikim in the making. But let's be honest. I am still exhausted from the holidays. And now at the end of our first full week back, I am totally wiped. I've traded high holiday sermons, cue sheets, and iyunim for Shulchan Aruch, reflection papers, and Sperling. I'm ready for December. And at this point, I expect you're thinking, it's hard to turn every corner with a smile or to exit the elevator with a pep in every step. And now this crazy darshan wants me to look at myself and all of the people around me as if they're tzaddikim. I can imagine how a tzaddik might feel or act. And it most definitely is not how I felt coming back after the break. But perhaps it doesn't have to be that difficult. We choose how we look at ourselves and how we look at each other. Let's start with how we look at ourselves. During the 2008 presidential campaign, I bought an Obama t-shirt, and I found that every time I wore it, I became a much kinder person. I held the door open at Chipotle. I didn't scowl at people with poor subway etiquette. I even gave directions to tourists. I wanted people to see my shirt, see a nice person, and translate those positive feelings to the candidate. Am I a crazy person? Maybe. Call it self-imposed symbolic exemplarhood, but I am positive that the label I wore on my body changed the way I felt and changed the way that I acted. But what about how we see each other? Harvard researchers in 1964 studied teacher interactions with elementary school students. They found that the higher the expectations of the teacher, the higher the performance of the students. The way the teacher sees the students impacts how the students act and the success that they can achieve. Similarly, our expectations of our biblical characters determine the lessons we might draw from their stories. We have a choice about how we see Noah. We can see Noah skeptically. Sure, he was righteous in that generation. Who wouldn't be? Or we can say, as other commentators do, that if Noah was righteous then, how much more so would he be now? So we choose to judge Noah lekaf zechut, from the perspective of his merit, and from there, learn to emulate his righteousness. And we can do the same for each other. See one another as if we are among the 18,000, and we are more likely to meet that expectation. And the best avenue to visibility for a new idea is swag. All those great tchotchkes that they give you at parties and conferences. Take the HUC-JIR Kala, for example. I use my Kala notebook and my Go Green cutlery all the time. And what if next year's Kala giveaway were a t-shirt that said Tzaddik in training? I would look in the mirror and remind myself that I can be a tzaddik. And I would look at my classmates and reflect on what I can learn from them as they become tzaddikim. We aren't going to become the 18,000 unless we start seeing ourselves as potentially among them. But that's only the first step to our 18,000 Nick movement. Much as I love a good t-shirt, a comfy poly cotton blend is only going to take us so far. We need something much deeper than that. I'm talking about our superpower that we rarely acknowledge, the power to name. Names really matter. In Jewish tradition, names don't describe what is so much as what still might be. As Midrash Tanchuma says, a person's name can influence its bearer for good or for bad. Just look at 1 Samuel. We meet the character Nabal, whose name means something to the effect of doofus. And in describing him, his wife says, Kishmo Kainhu. As is his name, so is he. In other words, his name means doofus, and he's a doofus. Kishmo Kainhu. A person lives up to or down to his or her name. And here's the thing. Whenever we talk, we name the things we talk about. Consider the average conversation on our campus alone. I worry we might leave 1 West 4th Street having built a spiritual practice of the kvetch. We kvetch because of the natural inclination to name negatively. Our classes, our classmates, our schedule, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. How we name is what we get. Kishmo Kainhu. But what if each day we arrived intent on naming goodness and righteousness? We can name the inspiration from a professor's lecture, the persistence of administrators negotiating a complex system of 4 disparate campuses, the patience of librarians who help us find book HN49 V6.4 F5.9 2008, the dedication of custodial staff who arrive before we do and stay long after we're gone, the dedication of a soup kitchen team feeding the hungry, the passion and the work of classmates striving to cure the world's ills, to make Israel a place we can be proud of, and to build synagogues that matter. Aren't these all instances of being at least momentary tzaddikim? As Tamim B'Dorotenu, complete for our time as Noah was for his. Absolutely, we should strive for still greater goodness, but naming how far we have come is the best way to keep going further in our efforts. And it's not just here that positive naming makes a difference. We can go out into the world with this spiritual practice of finding light, not darkness, righteousness, not frustration. By naming each other as tzaddikim in training here, we put ourselves on a path to joining the 18,000 out there. Kishmo Kainhu. That path necessarily takes us out into the world, because even with Noah, God had the broader world in mind. Noah, our first tzaddik, was not even a Jew. He was everyone, humanity as a whole. When it comes to the tzaddikim, God has all along insisted on the universal. So too is the sign of Noah's covenant. Our Ot Habrit, the rainbow, is different from every other Ot Habrit we see in Torah. Circumcision and Shabbat, they are particular to the Jewish people. The rainbow symbolizes a universal promise. With that rainbow, Noah trusted God not to bring destruction. And God entrusted Noah with the very same task. Noah, the first tzaddik, emerges as the progenitor of a global citizenry full of potential tzaddikim, charged with upholding the promise to protect and to preserve the world. To be tzaddik tamim b'dorotenu demands we take what we learn here and universalize it. By setting the example of naming for good and insisting on the better, we become an Ot Habrit ourselves, a model of what righteous people can bring about. Like the rainbow, the light from the tzaddik, from you and from me, can illuminate brokenness and darkness. with the technicolor brilliance of hope and of goodness. We most likely didn't walk into HUC-JIR on day one as one of the 18,000 Tzaddikim, but our task is nothing less than that. How are we going to do it? Well, just follow the instructions from the Department of Homeland Security. If you see something, say something. When you see tzaddikim, notice them. Find the words for what you saw and tell them. Help them see how they walked on the path of the 18,000. Learn how you might emulate them on your own path. Whether it's a fellow student, a staff member, a professor, or the president himself, speak up and name the moments of goodness. That goodness, the goodness my mother asked of me, the goodness we expect of and that we see in our community, that is how we uphold our part of God's covenant. Each of us can be Ot HaBrit ourselves, one of 18,000 rainbows, brightening the light of those around us. When we see a rainbow, we say, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Zocher HaBrit b'ne'eman bevrito, v'kayam b'ma'amaro. Blessed are you, O God, who remembers the covenant, is faithful to the covenant, and holds fast to promises. Let us, like God, remember the covenant, be faithful to it, and hold fast to the promise that is in each of us. Let us become examples of the 18,000 right here, and then someday, out there. And may we be God's partners and Noah's heirs in sustaining and in saving the world. Ken Yehi Ratzon.